Welcome to my first video. We are going to be doing a Rocket League mechanics tier list today, where I'm going to be ranking 18 different mechanics based on their usefulness, how easy they are to learn, and just how satisfying they are to pull off in game. Hopefully, if you're a low ranked player, this will help you pinpoint exactly what you need to focus on to rank up as fast as possible. Let's get started. The first mechanic I'm going to be looking at is the Musty Flick. Now, to start, the Musty Flick is quite difficult to learn, especially for low ranked players, so it's probably something you're not going to want to look into until high champ GC range. It does have some use, both in the air and on the ground, which does give it some points, but a lot of times more basic flicks will just be more effective than the Musty. I think it is quite flashy and does look cool, and because of that, I'm going to have to put it in C tier. I feel that's where it belongs best. Moving on to the speed flip, this is something that has really gained in popularity in the past year and a half or so. I strongly dislike it personally, just because it's annoying to learn. You go into free play and just flip around until you figure it out, essentially. It does have use though, especially on kickoffs, as well as just being able to move around the field a bit faster. It's something that's definitely not necessary though, and I wouldn't learn it until you're once again a higher rank, because it's probably a bit more useful than the Musty, but less flashy. I think those kind of balance out, and speed flip for me is going to have to go in with Musty at C tier. Next up, we have demos, and this might be a controversial one. They might be annoying, but there's no denying just how effective demos are. They're easy to learn, literally just run into the other car. It's simple as that. The only tough part is knowing when to look for demos, but they're incredibly effective at messing up rotation and creating easy goals. Demos to me are a clear S tier, something that if you want to become a better player are absolutely necessary to have in your game. Following demos, we have the half flip. Now, the half flip seems to be one of the first mechanics that every player who wants to take the game a bit more serious learns. It's easy, low level players can learn it. It's useful, helps improve recoveries and rotations. Maybe as you get a bit higher, your rotations improve, you won't need as much, but it still is seen all the time in high level gameplay. The half flip for me, it's not flashy, but it's useful and easy to learn. It fits perfectly in B tier for me. Next up is aerial shots. And this is something you should really focus on once you have a level of comfortability in the air where you're able to consistently touch the ball. At that point, you want to start experimenting with twisting your car to be able to get the most power possible on the ball. Aerial shots are something that's incredibly important. Nearly every touch at high level involves some form of aerial to be able to get the best placement and power possible. Because of this, aerial shots for me are an S tier, something you gotta have in your game if you want to be a high level player. Moving forward, we're now going to look at double touches. Double touches are one of the most iconic shots in Rocket League. Nearly every freestyle or fancy goal that you see involves some form of double touch. It's very useful, hard to read if you're not up quick in the air to block them before they get the second touch. It's something that does take a lot of practice and a lot of getting used to how to read off the backboard and get a powerful hit towards the net. But it really is useful and just looks cool and always feels good to pull off. Double touch for me is a clear A. The difficulty is the only thing separating it from an S. Looking at the Wavedash now, this mechanic has a lot of similarities to the half flip in my mind. It's something that lower level players can learn and is quick to pick up. It's not going to change your game completely, but it is going to help your overall movement and recoveries and make you a bit of a faster player. It's used multiple times in pretty much every game, from lower to high level lobbies, and really I think fits perfectly in B tier right next to half flip, and I think that's where it belongs. Thinking about the air dribble now, it's another one of those iconic Rocket League mechanics that everybody knows. It's super satisfying to pull off an air dribble that just goes over the heads of the defense. It's very useful both from the ground and the wall. Even if you're not scoring, just setting it up in a position for your teammates is always helpful. It does, though, require quite a lot of boost and some time. It's difficult to be able to build up that air control to where you can keep it consistently on your car. But just because of how fun it is to pull off and its overall usefulness, I think air dribble is going to have to go in A tier for me, along with double touch. Next, I'm going to take a look at shadow defense. And shadow defense is certainly not flashy, but it is extremely useful. Knowing how to shadow, when to challenge, how to play defense from awkward positions as you're moving towards your net is something that's extremely important, especially in 1s and 2s. 3s maybe not as important, but it definitely has its uses there. It's not fun to learn. It's just going to take a lot of practice, playing in games, practicing shadow defense, 1v1s, but it is so important that I think it's going to have to go in A tier for me. Now on to flip resets, one of my favorite mechanics in the game. In my opinion, one of the more flashy mechanics. Always feels great to pull off, looks super cool. It's not required to be a high level player. You can certainly get by without flip resets. They are useful, extremely hard to read defensively. But because of the difficulty, I'm not going to be able to put flip reset any higher than B tier. But I think just because of how cool and how satisfying it is to pull off, B tier is a good place for flip resets. Following flip resets, we go to wall wave dashes. And this is certainly going to be a low ranking for me. Wall wave dashes are difficult to learn, not extremely difficult, but not super easy. There's just not much use to them in an actual game setting. To me, it's mostly a waste of time to learn. Even at the pro level, it's very, very rarely seen actually used in game. Because of that, wall wave dash is going to be the first F tier for me on this list. Now onto the ceiling shot. In my mind, ceiling shots are actually one of the easier advanced mechanics to learn. Now that doesn't mean they're easy to learn overall, but compared to something like a flip reset, I think the ceiling shot is much easier to pick up. It's useful, unpredictable. It does require a lot of time though, and maybe hard to pull out in game because of that. But just because I think it leads to some cool goals and isn't as tough as maybe some other advanced mechanics, ceiling shot fits right in B tier. So now we have the fast aerial, and the fast aerial really isn't that difficult to learn. The biggest challenge is making sure you can consistently go up in the air without backflipping. But the fast aerial is something you absolutely need to know by the time you reach champ, and hopefully earlier. If not, you're going to get beat to almost every ball that's above goal level in the air. It's really something that you're going to be using all the time for almost every single aerial, and I would learn this as soon as possible in order to rank up quick. That's why, for me, fast aerial is going to be an S tier. The Doomsee Dish is a fairly basic mechanic. It's not something you really need to practice. Usually it kind of develops as you get more experienced in the air and being able to air roll, twist your car, and hit angles. It's useful, but a lot of times it will get blocked. In my mind, it's a bit more useful than the Musty Flick, but cool, not as cool to pull off. Because of that, I think Doomsee Dish fits right in with the Musty Flick and Speed Flip in C tier. Down to our bottom three, we now got the Kuxir Pinch, our second consecutive one named after a pro. This mechanic is cool, creates cool goals. It, however, is tough to learn and really difficult to become consistent at. You're really not going to have a lot of opportunities in game to pull off a Kuxir Pinch, and even then it might get saved. Realistically, this would be an E tier for me because it's definitely not necessary, but because I like Kuxir, I'm going to upgrade it to a D, and that's where it's going to end up. Now to our last two, we're going to take a look at the stall. This is something personally I haven't even really bothered to learn yet. I don't think it's particularly important. seems to mainly be useful if you're going for advanced aerial plays or freestyles. Because of its potential there, Stall narrowly avoids F tier, but just because its overall difficulty and general lack of use in normal play, Stall is going to be in E tier. Finally, down to our last mechanic, which I have as basic flicks. By basic flicks, I mean forward, diagonal, backwards flicks. These are just satisfying to pull off, always great beating a defender, flicking upper 90, banger. They're super useful, whether it be in 1s, 2s, 3s, scoring goals, or just getting past defenders. They're not super easy to learn. They definitely take some getting used to, but they're not one of the most difficult mechanics on this list. So because of that, basic flicks are something you really got to have in your game, and it's going to end this list in A tier. So there you have it, my Rocket League tier list. I think it turned out well. Obviously, I couldn't include every mechanic in Rocket League, but I think I got a good selection of the most well-known mechanics out there. I'm sure there's going to be some disagreements. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong. Subscriptions are always appreciated, and stay tuned for more Rocket League content coming in the near future.